Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Mark. It's my buddy Jeff. This is Let's Talk Some Music. It's a podcast that he and I get together once a week and we kind of pick topics and bullshit and, vent
Yep.
or
Ramble.
complain, ramble, whatever it may be.
Whatever grinds your gears, Mark.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this week, hi, Jeffrey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Everything's all right. So this week's topics, we're thinking Rushmore of guitar players.
This is gonna upset people.
This this is going well. It's funny because even like thinking about it when I first started writing it down, I'm like, am I? So I guess I'm asking you this and how we're taking this. Am I taking who I think the top four guitar players that like just badass, like technically or like influentially? Like I've liked a lot of people. I think a lot of guys are good.
Yeah.
That's a lot different than what like I don't try and play like them. I don't think their playing comes through my playing, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I thought too. There's one way to go about it where you can just say, okay, here's what everybody can agree on. But I think it should be like more of like, what are your, well, let's make it top five because top four is going to be almost impossible because there's going to be two on that list that I know we're both going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And
You know what
that's
I
what I
mean?
was like, yeah, I'm only looking for like two spots after
So let's, right,
that.
exactly. So let's make it five. Let's do top five. And it's got to be who is your personal favorite, not who you just who everybody expects you to say.
Of
Because
course. That yes, yes, yes. All right,
so
well we'll knock the first two out. It's got to be Trey and Jerry.
Jerry and Jerry. Well, yeah. Then that's just for me. For me, that's because that's my kind of music and that's kind of what I cut my teeth on as a guitar player. That's what I grew up on, trying to emulate those guys.
Yeah, and for me personally, when I'm playing, I feel like I'm shooting for those targets.
Right. And
Where it's
it's
like it's my inner monologue or my inner music is totally reflective of their music, or their
right.
playing. So
And it's a vibe thing too. It's the atmosphere that those bands created is kind of like what we've been after in our own personal playing and trying to create that kind of like culture behind the music, and the scene that it is that goes along with it, and like the sort of, the mysticism or the magic that happens in those moments and those improv jams and stuff. It's kind
without
of
a doubt. Yeah.
that, we both agree. So we'll just okay. That's they're on
All
there.
right. So then do you want to just say fuck it? It's Jerry and Trey are not even on Rushmore because they kind of ruined this
We have
this
to
thing.
eliminate them because that'll give us more room. So
Yeah, yeah.
they would obviously be on there, but
Yes.
let's make it seven and just assume that those two are on. So, all right. So you want to go or you want me to go?
I'll uh I'll go. I mean, why don't we go back and forth? So I would
Okay.
say my number one that wasn't Trey or Jerry is John McLaughlin. I mean, I can't play like him, but I think he's one of those guys where I listened to what they were doing in the Mahavishnu and it just blew my skirt up, and I was like,
Yep.
what the fuck is that? And then you learn that he played with Miles on Bitches Brew and you kind of
Mhm.
get more into what he was up to and it makes sense that turns my
Yeah. I
gears.
mean, I was gonna actually say him too. I feel like we're gonna agree on this pretty much. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that Saturday Night in San Francisco album with
Yeah.
Paco de Lucio and him. I mean, I remember us listening to that thing like religiously
Oh,
for a
over
period
and
of time when
over and
we
over.
were
Yeah,
living there.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Mahavishnu,
Birds of Fire. I
Birds
mean,
of Fire. Yeah, I mean,
just
and even beyond that, I have all those albums, all the Mahavishnu albums at this point. Um, Even after he stopped playing with Billy Cobham and stuff, had a whole new band. It was Mahavishnu, but like Visions of the Emerald Beyond is a
yeah,
great
yeah, I got that
album.
one. Yeah, I saw
Um,
him play once with no, I didn't, he wasn't there, but who was Robbie who's the tabla
the
player that
tablet. Oh, you're talking about
shit, his name just went right out of my head.
Shakti. Remember Shakti?
Shakti. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that in itself is like, one of the most insane things ever. That band is insane. It's just so good.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
All right, so
I would
McLaughlin.
have McLaughlin on mine as well. I mean, he's one of those guitar players that sounds like he is a direct channel to the beyond. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Not
absolutely.
like he can play extremely melodically and play like very beautifully and delicately, but when he's going off, it's just like pure, you know,
that
fire
stream,
energy just
yeah,
burning through, and you're like, what is happening? Like, where does this come from? You know what I mean? He's
straight lightning bolts from like the
right.
beyond to his guitar. You know, you're just like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
technical proficiency and also complete wild uncontrollability.
I think
Uh,
what really blew me away, I mean, obviously beyond the 10 top things about him, and you know, his speed comes to mind,
mm.
but
Yeah, it doesn't get credit for that. I don't know. I don't know if he gets enough credit for like being one of the first like shredders,
like going for it.
you know, way
He
back.
he never came across to me as like showy or like it was done like it was a technique that he had practiced at home. Like it is a technique that he's using, but it's a technique that he has as like a paint on his palette. He can
Mhm.
use it, but he's not doing it to be showy. I don't know if I'm making sense with
No,
this, but like
he's extremely technically proficient, but while also sounding completely raw and untamed. Like it's like
yeah, yeah, exactly.
he's got the ability to play the most perfect whatever, compositions and can play all the notes perfectly and beautifully and wonderfully and but he chooses to play in this way that is almost like
He's
it's
got that.
like primal and
Yeah, yeah,
completely
absolutely.
broken down and just spontaneous, it's just completely spontaneous and raw, which is, I mean, listening to him, you're just like, what? Like, I mean, you just go, what? That's the kind of players I like when it blows my mind, you know what I mean?
I think he's the type of player that would turn me on even if I hadn't been a guitar player. Like
Yeah,
had I played like a different instrument or didn't play instruments at all, if I would have listened to that, I still think like my wig would have been kind of knocked back like, what the hell is that
yeah,
guy doing? You know, that is wild.
yeah. And a great acoustic player too, which you know what I mean, which
Oh yeah, it
goes
crossed over. It
with
crossed
Di
over.
Meola and Paco de Lucia, that Saturday night in San Francisco. If people haven't heard that, is just
Yeah.
an insane display of guitar. All three of them, obviously, but um,
I
just
mean,
an
all three of those guys are kings in their own right, you
oh,
know, in
absolutely,
their
yeah.
own, you know. All right, what do we got next? Me?
All right, all right. So I'll pick my
Yep.
next one. I would say, see, now it's gonna start separating
The boys
thing.
from the men.
Yeah. So I mean, again, this is my personal preference about my
Yes.
favorite guitar players. You got Trey, you got Jerry, you got McLaughlin. I have to be, if I'm being honest, I have to say Pat Metheny
The
is one of my
Maney.
all-time favorites. And again, you're talking about the complete opposite side of McLaughlin, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like Pat Metheny's like the opposite of that. Um, but it's because of his melodic ability to like, he really does play in a way where it sounds like he would sing it that way. He's not, I mean, he can do a lot of technical things and play a lot of jazz and accidentals, and he can get really deep in the weeds and playing outside of the box. But like his melodicism and the way that he composes some of his compositions are just some of my favorite things that I've ever heard. Like First Circle is one of my favorite songs of all time. I mean, it's just one of those things. I used to have fantasies about being in like a vocalist in his band,
Oh yeah, the like because the
all
da da da. Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
I would have killed to do that, and then strum a guitar every now and then, but just stand in the back and play instrumental, little stuff. But
I mean, as
he's just,
far as a guitar player being able to sing through his instrument, like
yeah,
a saxophone player, or, you know, a horn player, something along those lines, to where it's just so vocally,
yeah,
you know,
it is.
compatible.
He's such a weird guy because the more you learn about him, like he doesn't do things in a traditional sense. Like every guitar player I know who's like a really great, who's a big time guitar player uses certain kinds of picks. You know what I mean? He's the
Yeah,
only one I know who's looking for the most paper thin pick you can possibly find. Like, he wants
that's
the
odd.
floppiest, most weirdest thin picks you can find. And that's just something that's just like, why? How did that happen? When you see him play and you see him hold his pick, I think I have one here. You can watch him do it, and he holds it almost like that. Like it's almost like it's so far
So
out
far away. Yeah,
the way and it's such a floppy pick, but it all contributes to his tone somehow. But like, I don't know
I guess it would soften your like attack, right? I
yeah.
mean,
Um, but I mean, just between him and like I used to go. This is back when you had to go to the record store to know anything, and I was just starting to try to get into like different guitar players. I had never heard of Pat Metheny. I didn't know who he was. and I just went to the jazz section. I was looking for jazz guitar players, and like, I saw an album that was there, and I was like, all right, I'll just pick this up. Like, I don't know what it is, you know what I mean? I took it home, and it was him.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're in the jazz guitar section, there's like, every album is his in that section, basically. I was just like, I don't, let me try this one.
Or like some
Um,
random Charlie Christian,
right.
you know what
But,
I mean?
and there's a lot of guys, most of them I had never heard of.
Yeah.
But, and again, he does a lot of stuff. I mean, Bright Side's Life is one of the, you know,
Everything he kind of touches is at
um,
least pretty,
he was playing
like
with Jacko before Jacko was Jacko, back
yeah.
he was like a professor at Berkeley at like 16. You know what I mean? The guy's
Yeah.
he's a freaking genius. Um, but his music is not for everybody, I guess, and because he started off, jazz, obviously jazz, but it's moved into more of like a world music kind of thing, you know what I mean?
I would
Uh,
put it more in like a world,
yeah.
like, universal, whatever,
Yep.
whatever how they would put that. But
But just
no,
for me, like in terms of my guitar development and like learning along the way, and like he was, I can't not say that he wasn't a huge influence on me early on because it was just,
yeah, I don't think I found him on my own. I think Nuker
yeah,
showed me him. I think Nuker was like, "Have you ever heard this fucking guy?" And I'm like,
right,
"No." And it's like that first one where, like you said, I forget what album that is, where it's the lot of the vocal lines are matched with him, like
yeah, yeah,
and he and I just sitting around looking at it like dorks, like, "Oh my god, look, listen to that shit,"
yeah.
you know.
And there's just some compositions that he does that aren't like big, long, epic things, like that are. Um, I mean, like there's a live album that I have, like The Long Road Home is a great album. It's got a bunch of stuff on there that's just some of my favorite stuff ever. Like Third Wind is just an epic, like just rocking song. I mean, if you just never heard that,
He
uh,
and his keyboard player, they
Lyle
compose together, right?
Mays
Yeah,
and
that
Lyle
guy's
Mays
that
is
guy.
another one who's not a guitar player, but is definitely on my list. That guy is one of the he's passed on now,
Oh,
but
has he? I didn't
yeah,
know.
but he is one of the most, again, the combination of him and Matheny together, working together and composing together, is just
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. I mean, it's
Um,
like sometimes you just find that person that you just like
yeah,
kind of get, they can finish each other's melodic ideas, or he's like, "Oh, you wrote that because I wrote this," and it's a perfect part, B part or C part
right. So that would be mine. Matheny would be too. I definitely have McLaughlin on there, and then Matheny would be on there as well.
with Danny. All right. Well, I think if I were to be honest, this one's a toss up, but I'll go Dickie Betts.
Dickie Betts.
Yeah, I think like the way he plays and his
Mhm.
ideas, I feel like talk to me where I go, I want to say that too. Like
Right.
like I can see my playing going in that direction just because
Yeah,
of his
I
influence.
remember when I found the Allman Brothers. I remember it was through playing with you guys when we were early on. We used to play Sweet Melissa all the time, and
Yeah.
I didn't know who that was. Of course, I was like 15 years old, and
Yeah.
but I remember getting that album, Eat a Peach, just because I was like, oh, let me actually hear the song.
Yeah.
And then going through that whole album is just, Liz Frere's in A minor, and um,
Yeah,
Whipping
Elizabeth.
Post is,
Yeah.
all that. I obviously huge Allman Brothers fans. I never realized how much of the Allman Brothers was Dickie Betts though. So
Yeah.
like when I early on, I thought, oh, it's all the good solos. That's all Dwayne Allman.
Yeah.
Like, it must be, and it's not the case.
Not
It's
that
like a
not
lot
that
of
he
stuff
didn't
that,
have his in
no,
the
not that Dwayne
beginning.
Allman wasn't amazing, but like
Yeah.
I think it's like Dwayne gets all the credit for some reason. I think it's because he passed on young. As part
Yeah.
of it. It was a tragedy that we lost him, but like Dickie Betts was,
For
you
me,
know,
I went
yeah,
and saw them boys live a couple times, man, and the two shows I saw, they didn't take a set break. They went
yeah,
hard for like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and it was just killer after killer. And it was like, obviously they have some ballads that Greg can sing and
mhm,
kind of slow it down, but they were ready to go as soon as it was like, all right, kick it back in, boys. Like, like
right.
he could fucking play. Like he could
Yeah.
just flat out play. And if you really like get into some of their live recordings, you're like, they
Yeah.
were
I
having
mean,
fun.
and just like, again, Allman Brothers are one of those foundational jam bands that sort of set the blueprint for the kind of music that a lot of these bands are doing now. I mean, the grooves for like songs like Ramblin' Man or Jessica, those sort of fast driving. I mean, you hear that in Fish today,
Oh,
you hear
absolutely.
that
Yeah, 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 no doubt. No
in a
doubt.
lot of bands, that are out there. It's hugely influential. And it's funny because they never talked about being a jam band. They just
No.
a band that jammed, you know what I mean?
Well, they like got thrown in that Southern rock thing, and they kind of just got to be like the big boys in the South. Like
Hmm.
everyone, Leonard Skinner, all those guys coming after them were like they wanted to be the Almonds. Like
Right.
look what they've accomplished and what they're able to do. And it was just they got away with it because no one was calling it jam, and they just that's what you did. It's
Hmm.
you know what I mean. It was like like a more of a blues idea in the sense of like no one would call a blues player a jam guitar player, but that's the fuck he's doing. He's doing the
Well,
exact same idea the jam
yeah.
guys are doing, just over a
Yep.
less structured thing and just kind of doing it.
I mean, think about this too. The musicians that band launched as well. I mean, you got Derek Trucks, early on, who came heavily from that influence of the Allman Brothers. Warren Haynes,
Yeah,
both of those guys could be on this list. We haven't gotten that far.
we
Uh,
haven't. I mean, let's
but
let me look down my
I know,
list.
right? But again, two great players and they were all part of that band. I mean, I have an old DVD of the Allman Brothers when it was Derek Trucks and Warren Haynes were the two guitar players. This is
Yeah,
after Dickie Betts died, and or was out of the band, I should say.
yeah.
Um, and it's just a great thing to see. I mean, just great players, great music, hugely influential. Dickie Betts can certainly be on that list, I would say.
For me, like I said, it's not like it always shooting for everything being technical prowess. It's
Right.
just the fact that like when I listen in even early on playing, I just the almond spoke to me, and then
Yeah.
it seemed like I would always gravitate towards the solos that kind of Dickie would play, where I would like mimic it, the
Yeah.
little bit of like his trills or his hammers and his pulls, and kind of going, what the hell is he doing there? That kind
Yeah.
of thing. So I think that he deserves to be on my
That's
list.
cool. Yeah, and again, for people watching, this isn't your list.
It's not your list.
It
It's
may be
not your
your list.
list.
It's not your list. It's my list.
Comment your list,
I can
and then
yeah,
we can.
put your list in the comments below.
Yeah, you got to smash like and subscribe or whatever the fuck this shit is. We're terrible at that part, but yeah, we are a podcast, so you got to follow us on YouTube for now.
All right, so we
So we
got
got
Jared, we got Trey. We haven't talked about them.
we have one, two. Yeah, I know. Do you want to
We'll
wait till
save
the?
them for
We'll
the end.
wait
We'll
till the
save
end.
that for the end.
Yeah, yeah. So we have
Uh,
1, 2, and 3 picked.
we got McLaughlin, Matheny, Betts. Um, I'm gonna have to go. This. I'm gonna hate you for this, but Jimi Hendrix is not on my list,
Jimi Hendrix isn't on my list either, by
and
the
it's not because I don't love Jimi Hendrix and think that he is absolutely
way.
should
He
be on
changed it
everybody's
all.
list. Yeah,
He changed it.
it's just for me and for what my stuff is. It's not like I went. I mean, I did go on I went on a Jimi Hendrix binge for a long time and tried to find everything he ever did and listened to everything and learned a bunch of songs and did the whole thing. But he wasn't the thing that changed my life. It wasn't like when I heard Hendrix, it was like my life changed, or
I
it was
think
like
for
I was
Hendrix,
just like, what,
for me, what he was doing, not what he was playing, but what he was doing, like emotional wise and energy wise, and his being able to kind of get into that next level shit, and like really, that is what I fell in love with him. I
Yeah,
was never interested in playing what he was playing. Like it never was like, oh, I really want to become like a super psychedelic blues player. It just
right,
wasn't what I was after.
yeah, yeah. So just so
Yeah.
people
I mean,
understand
Jimi
it,
Hendrix is the motherfucking man, but
of course,
he's just not
of
on
course.
our list.
I mean,
Get over it. Get over it.
Eddie Van Halen's not on my list either, although
He's
he
not on
could
my
be.
list.
Steve Vai is not on my list. He's a
Yeah.
great, insane, maybe one of the greatest of all time, technically speaking. But so
Yeah.
so for me, after McLaughlin, Matheny, as far as influence with obviously and Trey and Jerry, I would have to go.
It's so hard, dude. It's so hard.
This is my
Like,
last one. This is my last one.
is your
Trey
last
and
one?
Jerry.
Yeah,
This is
yeah. I
my
think
last
you.
pick.
Yep.
I'm gonna go, and this is more of a recent thing for me, and I in
He's really fretting over it. You can give me your alternatives.
if I can't, well, I got you got to stick to the rules. We only get five. I already got four. We got Jerry, I got Trey, I got McLaughlin, I got Matheny. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Jimmy Herring,
Ooh,
just because
he's right there on my. He's
he
like he's
he's
on the
like,
bench for me.
and
Yeah,
only because that is more of a recent thing where I really started like listening to him and like trying to steal some of his stuff, and I feel like his tone has influenced me a lot. Um, I've listened to him just because I was like his tone always like was just so impressive to me, and like I like kind of got into like researching what he was doing, what kind of gear he was using.
yeah. You
Um,
know, it motherfucker influences you when you're like trying to get their
right,
setup like online. Like, what the fuck are they using? What foot pedals? What
right.
compressor? Like, whatever it is to get that
I
tone.
saw him play with the other ones originally when he was filling in for Jerry after when the Dead first started touring. Um, and then we saw him up at the World Cafe that time.
Yeah,
Um, saw him with Widespread, obviously.
yeah.
But he's just one of those players that is just so technically proficient, but it's not necessarily his technical proficiency as it is his tone and his control and like the purity of the notes that he hits. Like he's got such great clarity in coming through the sound and like his just command over what he's doing. And
I
I started like trying to rip off some of his licks recently, and I looked up lessons, and it was just like I sort of got into this thing like, and that doesn't happen to me like as much anymore with modern guitar players. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I'm looking up, whoever that guy is with the neck tattoo and the thing and trying to figure out how to slap the shit out of my guitar. You know
Yeah,
what I
he's
mean?
like
Like,
in Polyphia or
yeah,
something. Polyphia,
Polyphia. Yeah.
Polyphia.
I mean, that guy's insane,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I don't even know if he's playing
Tim
guitar.
Henson or something. His
He's
name's like
playing like a bop it. I don't even know what that guy's
he's
doing. He's
playing
like, pull it, pop
he's
it,
he's
twist it,
playing
turn it.
he's yeah, looks like he's playing Guitar Hero. It's like
Right.
yeah, like
Yeah, I
yeah, I
don't even
mean
know
it's
what that guy's
ridiculous.
doing.
It's fucking ridiculous.
But like Jimmy Herring's probably one of the last guys who like, and this is probably in the last, I don't know, 10 years that I've really started just being like going after everything I could get my hands on with him in it.
Yeah.
Old aquarium rescue unit and
Old
um,
old aquarium is sick, man.
yeah, it's fucking
Him and
ridiculous.
O'Teal just getting fucking dirty.
Yeah,
Apartment Q 258 or whatever his name
yeah,
was, the drummer.
yep.
Stipe.
So he's
So he takes your last spot, Jimmy.
man, is he taking my last? Do I lock it in? Am I locking it in?
Gotta lock it in at 800. I mean, look, dude,
Yeah, I'm gonna go with him. That's what oh, you know what? Django.
Django. I don't know. He doesn't. I mean, he
I,
doesn't. He
I
doesn't.
love that kind of music. I love old gypsy
That
ragtime
swing, yeah,
swing like that. I mean, it's
yeah.
reminiscent to me of like barbershop harmony a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's got a lot of that old time ragtime kind of like, circle of fifths jazz. But I mean, talk about a ridiculously melodic, and I love it today. I mean, I like guys like Tommy Emmanuel
Tommy Emmanuel's a
or like some of
banger.
that gypsy players that he plays with, and you see him on like YouTube doing like these like clinics with like all these guys just going through all that old stuff like that, and
It's gorgeous.
it's really impressive. And
Yeah,
it
Django
strikes
doing
us.
it with two fingies. That's impressive as fuck.
All right, but I mean,
See, I told you we could talk about outliers.
all right, I have to choose. All right, so I'm going with Herring. I'm going
Herring.
with
All
Jimmy
right,
Herring.
Jimmy Herring. He is it.
That's my fourth. That's my fifth, and then we got Jerry and Trey, and we'll talk about them
Yeah.
as we get.
All right, my last one.
Last one. This is it. Make it count.
I know, and I was fretting over it, and I'm still kind of fretting over it. Jimmy's on here, Derek's on here,
Hmm.
but I think I'm gonna have to go with, and this is even a terror, and people are gonna smack me in the face over this one. I'm gonna have to go Grant Green
Oh
and
man,
and
Grant
over Wes.
Green.
I know, Wes is right. Like I have him.
Wes is another one. Jesus, I totally forgot about him. And I'm like, I owned all his albums. I
Yeah,
owned all his records.
and
Grant Green.
I think I think it's Grant because I really dug his like he was playing more on a funk side,
Yep.
like a funk jazz thing that he was doing, which wasn't as like spellbind, mind blowing as what Wes can do. And look, dude, I listen to Wes almost every day.
Yep.
But Grant Green, for some reason, I think he's on my list just because to this day, I still get up in the morning and I play along with his shit, just trying to like follow
Yep.
his runs and learn like his feel. So
Yeah. Grant Green. Man,
Grant
I didn't even think
Green,
about. I wasn't even thinking about.
any
Yeah.
of the jazz guys?
Not as so much. I mean,
Yeah,
I definitely, I
blue
wasn't into.
blue break beats like changed my life. Like listen to that
Yeah.
thing, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like this is the funkiest, coolest guitar player. Like he just seemed cool to me. Like
Right.
I don't know how gay sorry, how terrible that may sound.
Cancel.
We're canceled, but like I was, no Diddy. Like, I had a crush on him. Like that dude,
Yeah, I remember you were way into him back in the day. I was
yeah,
always into Wes more than Grant Green.
yeah,
I had all the Wes Montgomery Trio albums and all that stuff, and I used to play those like all the time. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, Grant Green, that's a good one, man.
yeah.
Okay, so you got Grant Green. So your list is Jerry, Trey, McLaughlin, Betts, and
That's
Grant
Green
Green.
Green.
Whew, Titans.
Yeah,
All right, and I got Jerry, Trey, McLaughlin, Matheny, and Herring.
yeah. Still,
All
I
right,
mean, get a load
so
of that. Think about them playing together.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Fucking ridiculous.
all right. So
So
in
Trey and Jerry.
Trey and Jerry. All right. So, phew. All right. So if I'm ranking them, I don't know if you can rank them. This is putting them all on equal plane. So I'm going to talk about Jerry first. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
yeah. They're
I
not. Yeah, there's no one first place in the.
yeah. So my introduction to Jerry and to Trey is completely different, and it's actually kind of weird because like I remember having, like I said before, my brother-in-law had all these tapes and stuff, and I got into the Dead way before I got into Fish. Um, and even like thinking back to it, like it took me a while to really get into like the live thing and to feel like the vibe of what the Dead was doing to even really appreciate what they were doing musically. Because the Dead as a band, when you're hearing like the double drums and sometimes it's loose and it's sort of, kind of collapsed,
Yeah.
like kind of rolling on itself. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like you're like, is this tight? Like I don't know. Like are they good? Like
What's
it- it-
Echo? I mean, it wasn't the greatest quality of their like the
yeah.
recorders, that were being
But
used.
when I heard like Blues for Allah and I started hearing like, stuff like bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-bum, bum, you know,
Yeah,
and that whole song and just the way that they were jamming and like these odd time signatures and then blues for Slipknot, Help Slip, Franklin's and all that stuff. Like that was honestly the moment where I was like, this is what I want to do. Like that was what I wanted to do. Was that album's, Blues for Allah, Help Slip, Franklin's, you know, and then later on,
it's
like
such a fucking killer.
estimated
Yeah,
profit and Terrapin Station and Shakedown Street and Dancing in the Streets and they were funky to me before I knew what funk was. You know what I mean? Before I
yeah,
got into like actual funk, or Parliament or James Brown even. That was what I thought of as funk when I was listening to the Dead. This is way
yeah,
back in like the 95,
yeah,
So that's when I started really trying to become a better guitar player, was when I really started listening to the Dead. Now, on the flip side of that, like at that same time, I was hearing Fish, but it was like weird. It was like, I was hearing all the weird stuff of Fish. I wasn't hearing the
yeah.
live experience of it. I was hearing, Esther and like lizards and stuff. And I'm like, I was hearing like their like the old Gamehenge stuff, the white tapes and stuff, and like
Yeah, the white tapes.
NO2 and all this stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's just so weird. It's like the recording quality's not great. It doesn't sound like and I didn't get it. And I
it
remember
was
having
so
arguments.
deliberately unpop.
Right.
You know what I mean? That it almost was like an offense to the ears when you
It's
first
hard to
heard it,
it's
because you're
hard to
like
approach. Yeah.
you're coming out of it from such a poppy place. Like everything
Yeah.
is. mixed and mastered and sounds delicious, and the vocalists are the strongest part of the whole thing, and
Yeah.
that's just
And
not.
even compared to like the Dead, who was psychedelic and jam and everything, I didn't even know that that was happening in Fish when I heard Fish. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
no,
like,
I
this is
know.
just
Yeah,
some weird band that's just trying to be weird. Like, I don't get it, you know?
yeah, just some
And I
dorks.
remember having conversations with some people in the high school when I was sitting there. I think we were in like what class it was, but somebody was like, they're the best band in the world. This was like 94, you know what I mean? I was like a sophomore in high
Sophomore,
school or
yeah.
something. And I was like, I was like, I don't even know what you're talking. Like, they're not that great. I was a freshman in high school, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't get. They're not even good, dude. They're not even good. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, you're out of your mind. They're the best. Every one of those guys is the best at their instruments. You don't even know what you're talking about. And I'm like,
Was
whatever.
it was it me?
No, it was Eric White Night actually.
Oh, it's
And
White. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so anyway, so I was like, whatever. I just don't like them. And then so like a couple years went by, and then I started hearing like stuff. I would just be at somebody's house and it would be some music would be on. We'd be sitting in a room, doing your thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and I'd be like, what is that?
What is that?
What is this? And it would be like a bootleg of something, from a live concert.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's Fish. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like that's not Fish. Um, so it took me longer to get to them. And then seeing them for the first time was just kind of like that was the moment. It was just like
But what about
earth
Jerry's
shattering.
playing is
Yeah.
like influential in your life?
Well,
Like not the Dead as a whole, but Jerry like specifically,
to me, it's he also has that same kind of thing that to me that Django has, where like the kind of music they have sort of has that sort of ragtime. Some of the songs do, like
Oh, definitely.
has that sort of harmonic quality to it, where it's of a time. There's certainly there Mississippi Delta blues and bluegrass and all that stuff that was, they were based in rock and roll, but like bringing all that together. And he plays in a way that's a lot like that. Like he follows a certain pattern, but he was just always like so good. You know what I mean? It's like um, I could never do that. I couldn't do that back in the day. And I'm like, how is he just playing all these notes? And they're improvising, on stuff that was odd time signatures and stuff. And like um, Jerry is like he's so tapped in like to a thing, and it's like he almost is like the guy who like tapped everybody else in. You know what I mean? Like when you listen to him, it's like he was there was no internet, there was nobody doing what he was doing back then. Nobody did what Jerry was doing. Like
No,
name a
like
guitar player.
what was creating that, right? Like,
Right. So it's like something is touching this guy. It's
yeah.
like God just coming down and being like, okay, you. And he's like, all right, boom. But once he found the door, he was like, oh, hey, everybody, rip, here it
Here we
is.
go. Here we go. Follow me.
Here's the
Yeah.
door. And everybody went, oh, that's how you do it. You know what I mean? Like,
I've
I
heard
don't know
him
that you would.
say that it was, and he hate to put it on like the L, but like he was basically like we had done so many psychedelics that it had
Right.
opened up some sort of creative portal in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah.
And he's like the things that were flowing in and everyone was receiving, he's like it's given me a lifetime of music. Like I will
Yeah.
never run out of
Yeah.
that well,
There's no shortage of material.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
he's like that well is endless, and as long as I maintain and I can tap into it and I can always drink from that well.
That's the other thing about Jerry that I found early on too. And that's one of the things I loved about him. There's a really good example of this on Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin, 1973. There's a Here Comes Sunshine opener. Um, and he's that solo I could sing every note for you on that solo. I've listened to it 1,000 times because he is so chasing down the mojo on that song. And that's the thing about Jerry is that when he's on it, you feel it. You know exactly what he's doing, and you know he's on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
You're like
absolutely. Definitely.
you can just watch him just chasing down this thing that's happening, and it's happening, and it's happening, and he's going exactly where it's going to go, and he doesn't impose his will on it. He doesn't force himself into the situation. He just rides it like a wave. But he's also completely aware of what everybody else is doing. And he'll allow himself to follow that thing up, but he hears the other guy coming up, and it's like, yep, you take that one. Yep. And then Bobby takes the line and he finishes him off. And it's just his ability to be psychic in the moment and to ride the wave is there's nobody else out there who does it like him. You
Well
know, it's
said.
just
Well said. Yeah, you gonna make Jerry heads fucking cry.
so. And again, I would recommend that show to anybody. It's Dane County 73, Madison, Wisconsin. That Here Comes Sunshine solo is just a. It's not the greatest, most flashiest 100,000 notes, but you can tell he's on it. The whole band is
Yeah.
on it, and that whole song is a vibe. Um, and it's just a great example of like what I'm talking about, I think. So that's what I like about Jerry.
He said,
You
drop
know,
the mic on it,
I
son.
mean, you can't, there's nobody else out there like that who could do what he was doing. And then because of the scene and everybody sort of put him on this thing and made him be like a god, but he never let that shit get to his head. Like he never, like, he
It is
never
it is
went out there
crazy
like,
that
oh, I'm going to prove to whatever. He was just kind of like, oh, well, hopefully it happens again. Like, like I'm always just chasing that moment. And
there's so many like infinite quotes from Jerry that showed you that like he wasn't like fake humility.
Mhm.
Like he was like true humility. Like somebody, I think we may have even talked about this before, where they were like, well, I guess you're comfortable on stage. He's like, hell no, I'm scared to death.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
he's like, would you be comfortable? There's like
Right.
40,000 people out there. And she's like, well, you do it every night. He's like, yeah, I mean, when you get out there and after like the first song or whatever, but he's like,
Right.
I mean, no, he's like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, and if
I
he was
mean,
like a rock star, those guys didn't have any of that fear. They were going to go out there and spit and, this, if you're like just acting, is what I'm kind of saying. If
well, I
you're,
mean, and the freedom that their audience allowed them, because I mean, you could put on a show, let's say, just pick a year like 82, 83 or something. You put on a random show from 82, 83, and they play the first song, and you're like, okay, like it's a little loose. It's like, something's not, and but it's like an old steam engine, you know what I mean? And it's like it starts picking up steam. And it's like all of a sudden those gears start getting lubed up and they start grinding. And before you know it, it's like they're the best band in the world. But no other band was ever afforded that. Like in that pop music time
oh
frame,
no, you better come out there
you
and
better come out and
deliver.
play the hits and
Yeah.
play it, and it better be the best thing I've ever heard from the first time. Their audience was like, "Oh, we're here," and they would just be like, "We're gonna get there. We'll get."
Yeah.
Nobody panicked and been like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, is this not going to be a good show?" Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
They're
No,
like Papa Bear's just getting warmed up.
right,
Let Daddy Jerry get himself together,
exactly. And it's like that. That is again, that scene is what led to the whole jam band scene that we have now. It's like Fish has got the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Their audience allows them so much freedom to do whatever it is they want to do, and they will back them up no matter what it is, you
And
know?
I think that's such a great point about this is that you hear some people talk about like what we were just saying that you have to get it done and it has to be this and it has to be that. And I also heard another person say it may have been that Cat Bacon Bits or whatever. He was like, you get the audience and then the audience is there for you. So they're there to support you and to push you up in this idea of what you're going to attempt to do for them. They're
Right,
not there going like in this give me like
right,
capacity. It's more in this we're here to support your endeavor and your
right.
attempt to
Yeah, we all know what the mission is.
yeah,
Everybody understands the assignment. The band understands it, the audience understands it.
absolutely. And this is what and we're going to collectively try to take this journey or get on this, this ride,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and ultimately, like I said, all that starts with the Grateful Dead. So, like Jerry, in that way, was a singular force. Not to say that bands didn't jam in the same era. Like, Allman Brothers were a band. They did not jam like the Dead jammed.
No.
You know,
No.
um,
Well, so
so
for me,
and
I guess
McLaughlin was playing in the '70s. You know what I mean? And his
yeah.
jazz projects and Bitches Brew and stuff like that. That's all fine and good. Um,
Then you get Weather Report, which was fucking ridiculous, with
Weather Report too. Yeah.
Weather Report was ridiculous.
I mean, we could have a whole show on jazz fusion
Well,
band.
that's a different one. So I guess
Right.
my
So that's Jerry,
yeah.
right?
So I guess so. I'm kind of in agreement. I think Jerry's on there because of who he is and what he represented,
Hmm.
and his like he was like the ultimate guitar vessel in my eyes. He could solo, like a jazz soloist who has gone into free jazz, or he can play bluegrass, he can play banjo, whatever. He gave the divine a lot of tools to be able to sing through, and he was on it.
Yeah.
He was able to do that.
Yep.
Now Trey.
Yeah. Trey's funny too. And but you know what's funny is that like both of these guys, based on the music and Jerry too, if you didn't know who they were as people and you just heard their music or you just listened to like, the Dead from like, all the way through, like if you just heard their music and you never saw an interview or never heard them talk, like neither one of them, their personalities matches the level of sorcery that's happening through
Yeah,
them. You
yeah,
know what I
no,
mean?
no, you're right.
Like,
You're
like Jerry's kind of like, yeah, hey, what's going on? They're kind of
right.
these, and Trey is the same way. He's kind
Jerry's
of this,
like he's like Krusty the Clown. You know what I mean? Like he has that same sort of like, hey,
yeah,
hi, kid.
yeah.
We ate a
But
bunch of
it's,
acid.
but the reality is that I think
Such an
what
awesome
is
guy.
unique about both of those guys is that it's because they don't take themselves too seriously. You know what I mean? Like they're not trying to be somebody they're not. They just are who they are. And Trey is the same way. It's like, so Trey is like,
All right, I will say for me, Trey is the is the ultimate conjurer. Is
yeah,
that the word of like energy? Like I've literally had these moments where I could see him
mm,
grabbing this thing, and sometimes he's almost like fucking looking at it while he's playing. He's like looking up, and it's just like his ability to get to that next level
mhm,
and like that tension and release is such a good they fucking just they
yeah,
took tension and release to a whole different level.
right.
And his
Well, and again, it's just the level of freedom that they are willing to dive into, the depths that they're willing to go to, like is so, I mean, it's so ballsy. I mean, because we've done it. Everybody who's been in a band or who's been in a jam band who's been like, yeah, we're in a jam band and we like to jam. And then it's like you get to that part in the jam when you start playing, it's really just one guy soloing and the other band's just vamping over a set of chord changes.
Yeah, what do we
And
consider
that's
jamming?
not jamming, right?
Mm-mm.
There's a difference. And the Dead knew that. They would get like so deep into stuff where you didn't even know where the form was. And the Fish is the same way. It's like they would go so far outside of the thing, they'd be willing to just throw out this spread cacophony of like distorted, like you're like, what? Like, and just to freak you out, you should be like, I don't, what is happening? And then wham, and it hits you right, and you're like, Jesus,
Yeah.
how did they do that? How did they get from there to there? There's a constant sense with Fish, or at least early on, that, and with Trey, is that like they're not going to make it through this.
Oh, they're
You know,
definitely
you
failing.
were like on the edge of your seat,
Yeah.
constantly, just like there's no way they can pull this off. Like, how are they going to get back to there from here? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so I was gonna
Is that Split Open and Melt?
yeah, it's like the
Dude, we
end.
should
It's
do.
like,
We got to do a challenge. Like, give me 5 seconds of any Fish song, and I'll name it. I
oh
guarantee.
yeah, we'll have to do. You know what we should do is like, if because those cats from Insufficient, that podcast that I did with them, like that
Yep.
this Fish, I was like, yeah, we'll definitely have to have you two on. That's what we should do, is do like a name that tune,
Challenge. Yeah.
like,
Keep
can you
score.
beat Jeff?
Yeah.
You
Can
know
you
what I
beat?
mean? Like there's no way when you're in this, like in we they and I, when I was on their podcast, I don't know if it was on their thing or afterwards, but we were talking about who keeps count in this. Who do you
Right.
think is? Who do you think's holding down the?
It's everybody, and actually, it's everyone and no one.
But
That's the cool
who do you
thing.
think does the? Who do you think comes back to that? Don't like to give you the one.
I mean, there's signals that are happening throughout it, and like Fishman will like tease something that'll sound almost like it, and just to get your attention, like, "Hey, tap tap
Yeah,
tap, remember this?" And you're like, "Oh yeah,
yeah,
And then once you get their attention, then it's like, okay, then we can start working our way back to it. But it's like their language and their communication between each other is just so
yeah.
insane.
It's so telepathic.
And again, and people are gonna be like, "Well, that's how the Dead was." Yeah, you're right. It is. And I wasn't there to see the Dead. I didn't see the Dead. I
yeah.
didn't never saw the Dead. I wish I had. I've listened to a bunch of their out and stuff. I've probably heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of live
Then
shows.
quit talking about them,
There's
dickhead.
stuff that I have still in my repertoire that I play that I just is some of the greatest stuff ever, and I keep them right up at the top with Fish. It's not
Yeah.
that one's better than the other.
No, no.
But we've been in those audiences in the '90s and stuff when Fish was just you didn't even know who they were. They were just this
Yeah.
band out of nowhere that was exploding at the time, and they were literally just conjuring magic, like you were
And it
watching
was
it happen right in
fucking
front of you.
cool, man. It was
Yeah,
cool because no one thought it was cool.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like at least in our high school,
yeah.
like when I was listening to Fish, it was like, who the fuck are you? Who? And I'm like, I
Right.
went to this show this last. Wait till this summer tour is gonna be sick. And it's like, I brought all my friends and it was like everyone was like, holy shit. I mean, the vibe, the show, the people, everything about it was just ridiculous. You
Yeah.
know?
And that was back in the day before the internet, so you had to go get tickets,
Yeah, it was a fucking thing.
Boscov's or something, and stand in line to get like tickets at like some random ticket distributor,
Yeah, Anton used
or
to.
mail order.
Anton knew like the sneaky place, the upstairs boss college over there by off of like 273.
Yeah.
And like
Yep.
him and like Jason, big Jason Sylvester, would they be there? He was always like, he didn't even know it was my brother for years.
Yeah. So,
All right, hold on. Let me pause. Do you think we should be, is this gonna wrap, are we wrapping this up?
well, yeah. So let's just recap here. So we both agree, Jerry and Trey and
We
John McLaughlin. We both had
Yeah,
those three.
we did have the three.
I had Matheny and Herring, and you had Dickie
I have
Betts
Betts in
and Grant
Grant
Green.
Green.
So those are your personal top five
Yeah,
guitar
from
players
me and
for
Jeffrey.
Mount Rushmore from me and Marky here. So now,
Mount Crushmore, more like it.
good. Uh,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yep,
So
there you go.
comment, you guys, like tell us.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, we would love to have the conversation where we could have we'll have a whole different episode where it's the runners up and who didn't make the cut. I mean, Demiola's all out there,
Al
Vi,
DiMeola was. I mean, both
Jeff
of us.
Beck,
Al
Jeff
DiMeola was
Beck.
huge with us.
I
Jeff
know.
Beck.
Jeff Beck was a huge one.
Yep.
There's a lot of, there's a lot that, that still, you know, season
Mm,
my season my food, but
yeah.
well, thanks a lot, y'all, for sticking around. Like I said, that's Jeffrey. I'm Mark. Let's talk music. Later,
Thank you.
y'all.